I'd like to talk to you about how plants, Anthophyta, actually flower. And it's actually controlled by a pigment. So we've talked about pigments before. We've talked about chlorophyll A and B and xanthines and carotenes. But there's another pigment that causes plant flowering. But as you may have guessed, plants don't flower throughout the whole year. It's time dependent. This is what we call photoperiodism. That is a rhythm which is depending upon the amount of light, and this is referred to as a circadian rhythm. A circadian rhythm means a biological pattern which is based on an environmental condition. So, for example, a menstrual cycle would be a circadian rhythm. There are circadian rhythms that are nocturnal, that is depending on things that happen at night. There are circadian rhythms that are dependent upon things that happen in the daytime, which are called diurnal. This rhythm is called photoperiodism. That is, the flowering of plants depends on the amount of light the plants get, and typically this means what time of year it is. So let's take a look at what kind of light that plants are getting here. Well, there's two types that are important to them. The pigment involved here is something called phytochromes, right? That's the pigment. And phytochrome is abbreviated by the letter capital P. And there are two forms of it. There is phytochrome PR, and there's phytochrome PFR. The R stands for red light. So PR is a phytochrome pigment which absorbs red light. And PFR is a phytochrome which absorbs far red light. So essentially here, PR is absorbing somewhere around, between 650 and 700, and PR is absorbing somewhere around 750 or so. What happens is that in the daytime, there's very little far red light, but there's plenty of red light, so pretty much PR is absorbing light. And at nighttime, what happens is that there's very little red light, but there's far red light, so PFR would be active. So we're going back and forth how the pigment works in daytime and nighttime. Now there's a conversion between the two forms. So essentially PR is converted into PFR, and PFR is converted back into PR. So let's go ahead and look at it. So it might be like this. Here's phytochrome R, and here's phytochrome PFR, right? And in the daytime, let's use a different color here so you can really see what I'm talking about. In the daytime, the plant is absorbing visible light, which has a fair amount of red light in it. So PR is absorbing red light and is converting itself into PFR. So typically at the end of a long, nice day where the plant has absorbed lots of red light, most of the phytochrome would be in the form of PFR. Now what happens at nighttime? At nighttime we don't get all that nice visible light, but there is far red light. So this guy absorbs far red light and then converts itself back into PR. So at the end of the night, the phytochrome is mostly in the form of PR. Okay? So it goes back and forth, back and forth. Which is the type which causes blooming in plants? Let me see. How about green for blooming? That's nice. Well, it's thought to be this guy here. So let's suppose that the springtime, the days are getting nice and long, so lots of this stuff is being converted into PFR, and therefore the plant has lots of that pigment, which then causes blooming to take place, flowers, and so forth. Okay, it turns out, however, there are some plants that really like a lot of PFR, and there's some that don't like a lot of PFR. So plants that like a lot of PFR would be called long day plants. Why is that? Because if the day is long, a lot of the PR is then converted into PFR. So there's a lot of PFR, and that causes blooming. These are called, therefore, long day plants, right? An example of that would be carnations. But there are some plants that actually bloom when there's low levels of PFR. In other words, when the day is relatively short. So they're called short day plants. Very little of the PR is converted to PFR, and those low levels then cause blooming in plants that are short day, like a poinsettia.